So when you're talking to a woman, maybe it's out on a date, maybe it's at a social event, a party, a get-together, maybe it's your third or fourth date, how do you create attraction? How do you get her feeling chemistry towards you so that she wants to see you again, so that she enjoys spending time with you? That's what we're gonna discuss in today's video. Hi, I'm Bobby Rio, and one of the things that I notice with my clients is that when they start watching some of my videos or paying attention to my advice, they get really hung up on this idea that I gotta play the game. And to them that means, how long should I wait before I text her back? Or how often should I make plans with her? And there's all these questions revolving around the game. But what I explain to them is that all of that's very important. But she actually has to enjoy spending time with you. When you're actually one-on-one with her, there's gotta be a feeling of chemistry. There's got to be a feeling of her going, wow, there's something here. I don't want this to end. You know, you want her looking at her watch going, oh man, it's already 11 o'clock. I hope we can just keep hanging out. I'm having so much fun. I'm feeling something here. You gotta have that. If you don't have that, none of the other stuff matters. That's gotta be there. And that's why in this video, I want to teach you something that I refer to as the golden triangle. And it's what I always tell my clients when they ask me this question, when they say, you know, what can I do to make her like me more when I'm with her? How do I have a conversation that gets her attracted to me? I tell them the golden triangle, and I tell them it's a very simple concept. And it's a way to organize this information in your mind, because I know sometimes as myself, an introvert, when I get around a woman, a lot of times I forget this stuff, right? My mind would go blank back then. I would get in front of her and I'd have all these ideas, and then I'd be like, wait a minute, what should I be talking about? And like, I'd wind up just going, so what do you do for work? You know, or like the other stupid questions that we all ask when we don't know what to say. So I want you to keep this in mind. It's called the golden triangle because it revolves around three specific things that if you weave in and out of your conversation, you will take the conversation to the right domain. But here's the key. This is very important. All three things must be here. If you're missing any of them, you'll wind up either in the friend zone or the creep zone. So you gotta make sure that all three of these things are here. So what are the three things that make up the golden triangle? Number one is fun. Okay, and I'm gonna explain all of these individually. Number two is connection. And the third part is intimacy. Okay? Without fun, she gets bored, right? Without connection, and you're focusing too much on intimacy and fun, you just become the guy either that's creepy because she doesn't really feel anything towards you, or you become the guy that she has a good time with, but she just kind of pigeonholes you as in her mind as just the fun guy. If you go too much connection without intimacy, you wind up in the friend zone. They've all got to be there. And it's not like a lot of guys say to me, well, which one do I bring in first? You're weaving them all in. You got to make sure that in the span of an hour or 2 hour conversation or a 20-minute conversation, all three of these things are happening. So let's go over them, because I think there's a lot of misinterpretations of what each of these things are. And I know that when I say fun or I say connection or I say intimacy, certain things might jump into your head and they might be wrong. So I want to clear this up, and I want to give you a really solid blueprint for when you're hanging out with a woman, the type of conversation, the type of interaction that you want to be having to make sure that she begins feeling that chemistry, or she continues feeling it, right? Because a lot of times, maybe the first couple times you hang out, things are good, but then by the third or fourth date, it's kind of like you've already gone through the normal conversation and you're like, well, now what do we talk about? This will help you out. Okay, so let's start with fun. What is fun? Well, if you think about the times that you had fun with your friends or another girl that you had a really good time with, or just in life in general, what constitutes fun? Well, there's certain things that are sort of universally fun. One is surprise. Surprise is fun, and I'm not talking about like surprise like somebody jumping out at you or a surprise party. I just mean when you expect something to go one way and then it doesn't hit your expectation, but in a good way, right? It makes something fun, right? Being swerved a little bit. Spontaneity. Being spontaneous is fun. When you think back of some of your most fun moments, it's probably when you did something spontaneous or when it felt spontaneous, like a spontaneous trip we all remember the spontaneous trip we went on with our friends once, or just something that happened that you randomly start a conversation with somebody and it just turns out to be this great time. That idea of spontaneity. But one of the biggest elements of fun is playfulness. Playfulness is fun. And one of the things that I tell my clients or guys that I'm working with that struggle with this is I say, there's a terminology that I give them to kind of remind them this. And the terminology is take her back to the playground, okay? Take her back to the playground, okay? The playground. Think of every time you're interacting with a woman, think of it like you're on the playground. Because things that were fun on the playground back in, the 4th or 5th grade or whatever, they are fun in the context of dating. Things that we wouldn't do in our normal life or with our friends, when you're with somebody you're attracted to, these things come out, right? We would not have a pillow fight with one of our friends, but if it's a girl you're dating, you might have a pillow fight with her, right? Even though it's sort of a thing you probably haven't done since you were 12 years old, in dating, a pillow fight is fun. In dating, thumb wrestling is fun, right? These are all things that you did back on the playground, but in the context of dating, that's fun again. Imaginary scenarios, right? Role playing. Role playing is fun. It's something you did when you were a little kid, when you said, let's pretend to be Ninja Turtles, and you went through this whole fantasy. Well, in dating, that's fun, right? A lot of times you can do that in the sense of like telling a woman, hey, like, wouldn't it be cool if we were just like top secret spies and we went and you go through this imaginary scenario. And what you're doing here and what makes all of this work is that you want to remove the two of you from everyday reality. And that's the biggest mistake that I see guys making when they go through their conversations is they stay within reality. They talk about their jobs and their troubles and their bosses, and they talk about, the fight that they had with their sister, and then they talk about, the vacation they took, and all that stuff is okay, and it can be there in small elements. But to create that element of really strong chemistry, really strong attraction, you sort of need to remove her from that everyday reality. And you do that by taking her to the playground, playing little childish games with her, teasing her, right? This is a key. And I want to tell you the way to tease women, because a lot of guys get this wrong. You don't tease somebody about something that they're insecure about. That's like being the bully on the playground. You tease somebody about something that they're proud about. You're playful about something that you know is actually a compliment. So an example might be if you're talking to a woman and you find out that she went to Harvard, right? You know that she's secretly proud that she went to Harvard. So that's something that you can tease her on. You can say, hey, do you find a way to inject the fact that you went to Harvard into every conversation? Do you think, how can I weave it in? Or do you accidentally leave your diploma on, how did that get there? When a guy comes into your car, he sees your diploma. You can tease her about that, because it's something that makes her feel good, but she can also laugh about it because some of it's probably true, right? She probably has weaved it into a conversation. So there's these elements that make something like that good. On the other hand, if she didn't go to college, you're not going to tease her about that, right? Because that's an insecurity she might have. You want to tease somebody about something, like if they're really good looking, you can tease them about that. You can tease them about something that, that if they're dressed really good, you can go, come on, how long did it took you 18 hours just to pick out that outfit, right? Were you standing there, you can tease her because she knows she looks good, so you can tease her about that. That's what makes it playful and fun. So, I'm gonna go through these sort of quick because I wanna show you though. Now, all of this is great, right? This is the fun element. But if you only did the fun element, you would be the fun guy. At the end of the interaction, she might go, that was really fun, but you may not even hear from her again, right? Because she felt no connection to you and she felt no intimacy towards you. So let's talk about connection, because here's another element that a lot of guys tend to get wrong. Connection is not liking the same thing. This is a huge mistake. And I hear when I get on a phone with a client and I go, well, what do you really like about her? And like, oh, we both like the same music, and you know, we both like we both like mountain biking, and we both like hiking, and all of that is good, but that's not really what we're talking about in terms of connection, right? It's not about going, I like that too. That's not connection, and a lot of times that can be try hard, and also women don't always want a guy who's exactly like them. You know, if she's into yoga, and you're like, oh, I love yoga too, you may be thinking you're making a connection, but in reality, she might be going like, oh, all right, like she doesn't really want you to like all the same things she has. She wants you to connect over something else. It's called an emotional connection, right? That's what you're going for. Connecting over emotional experiences. Because this is ultimately how we fall for somebody. It's when we get to know them. And you get to know somebody by getting inside their head a little bit and seeing the world through their eyes and then relating to that. So if you think about, let's just say, comedians. Comedians are really good at this. Not all comedians, but certain comedians where they tell anecdotes. And what makes it funny is that part of you is going, even if it's something that's never happened to you before, you're relating to the situation. So if he's telling a story, you're putting yourself in that situation through his eyes, and then he's telling you what he was thinking while it was happening. And now you're relating to the comedian, and it's funny because you're going through that experience, you're sharing that emotion with him. And that's ultimately what you're trying to do with women, is you're trying to share emotions with them. Now, it doesn't need to be funny, right? Like we're not trying to be comedians here. However, you want to keep the emotions light emotions, right? Meaning you don't want to share an emotion like, I had an overbearing mother growing up and she was so controlling, and she you know, and I was always trying to please her, and she liked my brother better than me, and you know, I was always like, that's not what you want to do, right? That's a negative emotion. You don't want to bond over these negative emotions. That's almost too deep, right? Those are things you talk about maybe later on when you guys are like serious, but in the beginning, you don't want to bring up that, right? Light emotions are bonding over things like, you know, telling her a story about how when you were 7 years old, you found out there was no such thing as Santa Claus, and because you went into the closet and you saw all the toys, and you're like, man, like if I tell my mom that I found the toys, am I not going to get presents? And like, do I pretend that I still believe in Santa Claus because I want her to, you know, I want my parents to still celebrate this Christmas, and you go through this whole thing of how you were feeling during that moment, right? That's the kind of childhood experience that you can tell in a way that bonds her to you, right? Light internal conflict. Maybe you're on a date with a girl and you guys are talking about bad dates, for instance, right? It's a conversation topic that I used to love, right? And you say, man, I went out with this one girl and she looked nothing like her pictures. In her pictures, she was like this petite Asian. I get there and it's like a 200-pound white girl, and I'm like, how do you even how is this even acceptable that you're trying to pull this off? Like, don't you realize that you know, you look nothing like your, you know? And in my head I'm thinking that, but I'm going, you know, what do I do? Do I bring it up? What's the etiquette on that? You know, or do I just sneak out to my car and leave, right? So right there, if you're telling a story like that, you're sharing that emotion of disappointment, of being like, what do I do? And she can relate to that. Even if she's never had that experience, she can put herself in your shoes and see what you were going through. You can share that emotional experience together. And that's what connection is all about. It's about sharing an emotional experience. It's about you sharing yours and getting her to share hers. And what happens is when you take the lead and do that, when you tell her this story about, you know, this bad date you went on and how she'll come back and she'll tell something similar, and now she'll be putting herself out there and you're relating to her. And that's where connection happens. You need that to be there. But again, right, it has to be in the context of all three of them, because if you just spent the whole conversation, and we've all done this, I was the king of doing this, where I would be connecting and connecting and connecting and connecting, but I would never bring any intimacy into it, I'd wind up in the friend zone. So all three of these have to be here. So now you have connection, you have fun, but now you need intimacy, right? Intimacy is what separates this conversation from a conversation you would have with your friends, right? Because We've all had good conversations with somebody we're not attracted to. Well, what makes it different? This does. Intimacy makes it different. Intimacy is what draws that line of this is more than just a friendly conversation. How do you bring intimacy into a conversation? Well, you do it in a variety of ways. You can do it with looks, right, and eye contact. So if you're talking to a woman, right, and I always say, guys, and I used to be like this myself, where I hate awkward silences because I'd feel like, oh no, we don't have enough to say to each other. And then I realized, wait a minute, silence is actually a time to create some intimacy. So instead of trying to fill all these silences, you can instead just give her sort of a look, right? Hold eye contact just a little bit longer, right? Imagine if you're with one of your guy friends. There's that weirdness with eye contact because it's not an intimate situation, it's just a friendly situation. And if you make eye contact and you hold eye contact with one of your guy friends, it's gonna be weird. And that's why when you're with a woman, you wanna do that because that's what separates it from a friendly conversation. You wanna do things you wouldn't do with somebody you were just friends with. So you can hold that eye contact, right? If you guys are talking and then all of a sudden you slow down, you just hold that eye contact just a little longer than normal. That creates some tension, which equals intimacy. Same thing with touching, right? And when you're being intimate with somebody, you're touching them, she's touching you. You guys are like getting closer together as you're telling a story. You're leaning into her, she's leaning into you. That's the intimacy aspect of it. If two people were standing in a room watching you, they should be able to see from your body language that there's attraction going on because you guys are leaning into each other, you're touching each other. If you just did this, right, if you were having fun and connection, but you're both just standing there like this, you're not gonna get that intimacy that you need. You need that closeness, right? Intimacy can also be compliments, but not the type of compliments most guys use, right? So I call them specific compliments because you don't give specific compliments to somebody you're not attracted to. You may give specific compliments only to somebody that you actually want. And I'll give you an example. If a girl has really nice eyes, that's sort of a general compliment because she's gonna hear that from her friends, she's gonna hear that from, everybody in her life is gonna have told her she has nice eyes. If she's beautiful, right? You're really beautiful. Like, that's a general compliment. She's heard that. On the other hand, a specific compliment, something that you find sexy about her, that's something that equals intimacy. Pointing to a little freckle on her shoulder and telling you, I love that little freckle on your shoulder, it's sexy. That's bringing intimacy into it, okay? So you can use a specific compliment. You can also use statements and conversation pieces, okay? So this is a way to make, I call it making the conversation a little bit more R-rated, bringing a little bit of R-ratedness into it. So let's just say you guys are talking about TV shows, and she's like, oh, what's your favorite TV show? And you tell her, oh, I like this, and she's like, oh yeah, I've been watching Outlander. Now, if you've seen Outlander, you know that it's essentially porn for women, right? And a lot of women love it. So if she says that, you can go, oh yeah, I bet you watch Outlander. You give her like a little look and you tease her a little bit because now you're bringing that element of sexuality into the conversation, right? You wouldn't say that to your sister or your mom. If they told you like Outlander, you're not gonna go, I bet you do. I bet you watch it with your door closed. But in the context of a woman you're talking to and flirting with, you can do that, you're not gonna harp on it. Talking about sexuality is not about graphically talking about sexuality. It's about alluding to it. It's about challenging her a little bit about it, right? I bet you watch it, or like, are you teasing her about it? I bet the plot is really good, and you just read the articles, right? You just read the articles, like you're teasing her, and you're making that topic of sexuality be okay within the relationship between you two, and you want that. Now, like I said, the key is you're always rotating it. You're not staying in any of these areas for long. So if you're connecting with her and you're telling her some childhood stories, or another great way to connect with a woman is I call them internal struggles, right? Or eternal struggles, whatever word you want to use, but they're a little bit of both, right? Things that everybody can relate to. So maybe an internal struggle is, part of me just wants to go balls to the wall, building my business and become a billionaire and have a yacht and a private jet. And I get all excited about that. And then another part of me is like, yeah, but you only live once. Isn't it better to relax and go camping and enjoy nature? That's sort of an internal struggle. And that's something she's going to relate to because everybody can relate to these things. But we don't talk about them often, right? It's not something you go around talking about. So when you do talk about it with a woman, even though it's something that everybody can kind of relate to, because you two are talking about it, it brings you closer together and it solidifies that connection. So future ambition, right? What do you want to do? How do you want your life to be? All these sort of things are ways to connect. But if you stay in connection too long and you never add intimacy, you're in trouble, right? If you start off the conversation and all you're doing is, touching her and, making sexual comments, you're going to become a creep. She's not going to want to hang out with you. That's why it's like you're always rotating these three things. So one of the things that I recommend, if this doesn't come naturally to you, because it did not come naturally to me, I'm a natural introvert. I had to learn this from ground up, right? It was almost like learning another language for me, because for me, I was the king of just boring, what do you do for a living type conversations. And I had to actually go out and watch what guys were doing and study them and really pay attention to guys who were naturally good at this, what was happening. And I created a book. It's called Charismatic Conversation Secrets. It's $7, and you can click the link below to see it, because what the book does, it goes a lot deeper into it, right? I try to give you as many examples in this short period as I could, but in the book we talk about lots of ways to create a fun vibe, lots of ways to create that sort of sexuality, that sort of intimacy within the confines of the conversation, and lots of ways to build rapport and connection and emotional connection, and also the mistakes you want to avoid, because a lot of times just avoiding some mistakes you might unconsciously be making will dramatically improve your ability to connect, attract, create chemistry when you're talking to a woman. So if you like this video, hit like, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, and if conversation is something you want help with, grab a copy of the Charismatic Conversation Secrets. It's concise, it's filled with example after example after example. It will help you out. It's $7, and I guarantee you it will help you out.